All right. We are getting here. We are live. Hey guys, Adam Sobieski here, co-owner of Sharp Retention. My business partner Sarah is not going to be on this week with our Power Talk interview here today with one of my favorite people of all time, Mr. John Kitchens with eXp Realty. John and I go back, probably 6-7 years. From way back in the day when I first visited you guys and passed out cold in your office. John is one of my favorite people. He is, to say he's an experienced real estate coach would be the understatement of the millennium. He is one of the, if not the best real estate coaches I've ever seen. I've watched him personally. I've been to his masterminds. Most of what I've implemented in my own business at a high level has come from something that John has taught me. He's a giver. He's logged over 6,000 hours of one-on-one coaching and almost 10,000 coaching sessions with top realtors across the country. Let that sink in, guys. 10,000 coaching sessions. You might as well just say a zillion. I can't even quantify that. That is nuts. John's helped countless real estate agents, business owners create systems to propel their business to new heights. Systems being the key word there. John coaches agents through strategic structures and disciplines so they can grow their business substantially and increase sustainable revenue. That's the biggest thing. Sustainable, predictable revenue systems. That's what John's about. John, it's an honor to have you on today, buddy. How's it going, man?
Man, doing fantastic. I appreciate you guys taking the time and having me on. Really been looking forward to this conversation today.
Of course, man. Pleasure's all ours. So we'll dive right in here, guys. The topic of the call, and I kind of let John pick it, and I knew this would probably go this route, is going to be leadership. And John is a great leader. He's helped lead leaders, which is really kind of the evolution of a great leader. When you're, leading salespeople, and then you grow to a place where Mr. Kitchens is at, where now you're leading great leaders, and that's a whole nother level. And so, John, to kind of start real broadly here, and then we'll go a little more micro.
Sure.
What does leadership mean to you?
Man, in the truest essence of leadership, it's just being able to really influence another human being, another organization, another company. And, some things have to go into that. We have to factor at the beginning of that is like, can we even influence ourselves to do the things that we need to do to show up? How are we showing up? And, a lot of, translations that can really help connect with what we're doing in our business is, how are we showing up at home? How are we showing up in the other equities of our lives? And, it's easy when you've got kiddos, right? You can definitely, man, if you got kiddos, then you can run a business because it's a lot of the principles apply. There are a lot of the similarities, but man, it's just really being able to influence yourself to show up the way that you want to show up and really help model that behavior to inspire and influence another human being, organization, team, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I'd say I love the influence, leading yourself first. Like, stop right there. If you don't have integrity with what you tell yourself you're going to do, don't even try to lead anybody else. Because if you don't have integrity with what you're telling you, the integrity comes across in your words when you're communicating with other people, and they can feel that. It's like, okay, this guy can't hold him accountable, but he's telling me what to do. I like that with yourself and then with your family, right? And truly my belief, and I heard this the other day, if you're not a success with your family, you're not a success. It doesn't matter if you have $100 million in the bank. Like, that's where leadership and success starts first, with you and your family, and then it goes out from there, truly.
Right.
So I love that, man. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, John? I actually kind of want it just in general, kind of how did you go down the path of, 10,000 coaching sessions, coaching some of the top 1%, agents across the United States and Canada for years now. How did that start though, man? Like, where did this come from?
For me, it's I'm the guy that gets to come in when you need to stabilize the ship, right? You need some structure, you need some systems and some processes in place. And so, Michael Reese is the connector, and there's always a connector in our lives. And, Michael and I go back junior high school days. So like, man, we were first roommates out of high school going to college. And, it was some good old times. That's a whole nother conversation, but
Sure.
Michael caught wind, and man, back in 2004 that I was about to make a jump with the guys that I was, working with. And, I was working, they're serial entrepreneurs is who they were. And, what was cool about that experience for me was that, they would take ideas and to execution into a business and flip it. And so, man, I got to be a part of 4 of those processes with those guys over about a 3.5, 4-year period. And the idea, they ended up flipping it after the fact, was not the best of experiences. If you like to, visit a bar and you like to have a few drinks and hang out in a bar, it's not a good idea to own a bar. I think that you might want to give me a call and we can talk about that. And so I was out. Michael knew I was going to be out, and man, he made the connection with Kinder. He knew Kinder needed some stabilization. He needed some structure. And, when I came on board, it was pretty cool because, they were already highly successful. I mean, number 2 team in the market. I think the year 2004, we ended up closing, 340 transactions, and, I didn't come on board until October. So, he was already highly successful, but if you talk to him, he'll tell you he was the most miserable that he's ever been in his entire life. Mm-hmm. And so he wasn't happy. Right. And so, like what you were talking about, what is success? Right. And so coming in, putting the systems and structure and processes in place that you really need to stabilize whatever it is that you're doing. We went to 430 and then 521 was the following 2 years. And then that was the point, it's like, hey, we were at a fork in the road. What's next? Mm. And so, that's where the coaching organization kicked off. Fast forward 2010, 2011, that's when we made, we broke away from Caldwell Banker. We were Caldwell Bankers. Kinder's dad still owns the Caldwell Banker franchise there in Lawton. Wow. And we broke away in 2010. We evaluated. He tried to sell us the company. We just didn't want to get tied to that franchise agreement. Mm-hmm. And I heard a great analogy with the franchises is that you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? You're not fully an entrepreneur. You're not really making good business decisions, but yet you're an employee of that mm-hmm. franchise. Mm-hmm. I started to think about that. I was like, man, that's one of the reasons why that never settled with us very well by making that decision. Right. And so we went independent, and I really took over the reins of the organization. Our 3rd attempt, we finally pulled Kinder out of the business, and he was able to transition down to Dallas full time. And, I ran the reins with, we had an incredible team. We learned a lot through that, the initial period there. And that's really where, from a leadership standpoint that, you get pressure tested when things get super tough, right? And you're running on fumes and you're having to make hard decisions. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you this, because you know how amazing she is, but, Holly had just come to work for us, and, when things get super tight and when you have to make a decision of who you get to keep on payroll and who you don't, yeah. Man, it's tough. I guess I still did okay because she ended up saying yes a few years later, but, and so really understanding the true dynamics, of how to run an organization through tough times really was, really, it was just a tremendous value proposition lesson. Mm-hmm. And one of the cool things that started happening during that time frame when the guys were getting the coaching program going was that, all of the top clients started calling and texting and emailing on a consistent basis. Our coaches started saying, hey, what's going on? And we were really the guinea pig for, what we were coaching and teaching on, right? We were always progressive in the market. We had the Commissions Inc. platform from day one. Mm-hmm. And for those of you that have been day one, you understand what I'm saying. It was terrible. It was the worst platform out there. But yet, we stuck with it. We didn't close the deal from that platform for like 14, 15 months, but we stuck with it. They had amazing leadership in place at the time that did. I learned a really cool lesson from Dwayne, was that he listened to what the feedback and what people were saying, and then he implemented faster than anybody I've ever seen. And I think those were just some key lessons that can be applied in whatever you do, man. Listen, that's really, you want to get down to also, some fundamentals within leadership. It's the ability to listen and really listen to your people and really, hear what they're saying.
That's an opportunity, as I interject there. That's an opportunity for growth for me, for sure. Listening. A lot of us, big talkers, and, we kind of, as Harley was saying last week, it's kind of like our words, nobody's building the houses, but our words end up as dollars in the bank account. But also with that, your words are more effective when you're able to listen, come up with solutions, and then offer that, right? And so what would you say in terms of, how can somebody become, I think being a great listener is part, Dwayne Legate, obviously being hugely successful with Commissions Inc. From what he had told me himself, he's like, I can barely work an email address, right? And he built, this CRM software company. And I think it's because the guy's a great leader. He listened well. And like you said, then he implemented quicker. He would make things right, apologize, listen, make it right, communicate, right? So what would you say are some tips on how can somebody, a team leader, or even just if you want to be a good listing agent or buyer, like you're leading your buyers and sellers through the transaction, right? But if you're not listening, you're going to lose rapport, you're going to lose the deal, you're going to be hit with something that you weren't expecting. So what are some tips on how somebody can listen to be a better leader? How can they improve that?
Yeah. And it's tough. And it's, leadership is a skill. If you look up the dictionary definition, it's something that is a skill. And if you take that principle into consideration, that if it is a skill, then it's something that can be learned. And so you just have to have that understanding that leaders are made. They're not born. And so you want to really focus on it and try to improve upon it over time. I think another key thing to really hone in from a leadership standpoint and the ability to listen more is to create a good feedback loop and have people around you that are not afraid to tell you what you need to hear. And I've been super fortunate enough, obviously with Jay and Michael, but even more so with Holly, right? I mean, I've never had somebody that will put me in check like that out of the sheer essence of love, because she knows that I want to be better each and every day. And so I think it's absolutely critical. We talk about who you surround yourself with, but you better surround yourself with people that, from a motivating factor, love is the highest level. Love is the highest level of accountability. And so having those people around you to be that tight feedback loop, to give you that information, is one of the fastest ways that you're going to improve in anything. And so definitely from a leadership perspective.
Doesn't always taste good or feel good though, right?
Never.
I have to apologize and thank my wife, gosh, at least on a weekly basis, probably daily, for things she tells me. I'm like, nah, and I'll maybe fight. And then the next day, sure enough, she's right. And then I start implementing, right? Because she wants me to be better. She knows that I want to be better. And business partners, people on your real estate team, people that are your colleagues, people you surround yourself, they should be doing that. They shouldn't just be telling you what you want to hear. And if they are, then I'd get some better people, right? Or I'd listen closer and be like, well, maybe that was critical feedback, and what can I learn there? And then for us chatty people, because a lot of realtors, right? High D's, high I's, we like to talk, right? And that has its place for sure, myself especially. But one thing that I've done, and John, I don't know, you're a great listener. I know for sure, because I talked to you many times. One thing I've started doing in my business and just in general, like on these, I already got a full page of notes here. It's kind of chicken scratch. But when I'm dealing with, one of our office leaders or one of my salespeople, or, on one of these Facebook Lives, I know for a fact that listening is not my strength. I like to talk. I like to get in there, right? Make some points. So what I found is that I've absorbed everything you're saying simply by having a little pad and some notes, right? I wouldn't recommend doing it on your iPhone unless you have all your notifications turned off. But if you are leading a team, if you're leading a seller, and you're like, gosh, I leave that listing and the next day I don't remember exactly what they say, show them that you're listening by saying, hey, is it cool if I have a little pen and paper? I want to take notes on what we're saying. Your doctor does that, right? Good professional people that are consultative salespeople usually take notes. And so I found that to be extremely helpful for me, in terms of listening. And then I always try to go back in my head whenever I find myself wandering, and I do on these Facebook Lives or on a call or on a conference call, be present, right? That's kind of like the little mantra in the back of my head of like, okay, I know I have 9 million things to do after this Facebook Live right now, but none of that matters except for our conversation, right? And so those are the two things that have really helped me, is taking some notes and having that mantra in the back of my head whenever you get scattered, because you will, just coming back to like, hey, be present in the conversation, take a breath and get back in there, right? Because it's hard to be on a 30 or 45-minute call or presentation or whatever. And so having those things has really helped me a lot. I just wanted to kind of chime in there. But what are some other things that you think are really good or necessary and key characteristics besides being a great listener, being able to lead yourself and inspire others? What are some other really key characteristics that you would say make for a great leader, somebody who can actually lead leaders, lead themselves? What are some other characteristics that you think, especially people are lacking, right? Not like the obvious ones of like charisma, things like that. What are some maybe not so obvious traits that you see great leaders have?
I think it's you nailed it a little bit earlier. We were talking about it, and it's personal. I think one of them is personal integrity. Being able to keep the promises that you make to yourself. Because if you're able to do that, we all understand what integrity is, and we say we live with integrity, but do you live with integrity with yourself? And so many people don't, right? They're just, they're not keeping the agreements that they make with themselves. I think the other, one of the other key skills, and it's, kind of a hot topic thrown around, but it is really, really critical to be able to develop is the emotional intelligence. And when you break down the 5 pillars within emotional intelligence, it's self-awareness, right, is number one. So do you have that awareness of where your strengths lie, where, what you're good at, what you're not good at? And what are those, what does that look like? The other is self-regulation. And this is really important because self-regulation just really means to be able to control your emotions. And you see a lot of people that don't know how to do that. They don't know how to deal with their emotions. And then, the other leg is, I guess, well, here's some key things that can help with the emotional side of things, is that our bodies, with whatever equity we're talking about, right? The physical, the mental, the emotional, or the spiritual, and not spiritual in religion, but spiritual into knowing who you are at your core, right? You talked about from a core value perspective. You mentioned earlier that people can tell when something's off, right? When you're out of whack, and when that energy level that our bodies put off, it's because we're not living in alignment to who we are. We're not living in alignment to our values. Women have that gut feeling, that intuition. Us guys can do it. It's just we just got to be a little bit more aware of it. But that is absolutely key. And that's that personal integrity, keeping them, understanding who they are, living and keeping the agreements to themselves. But on the self-regulation and monitoring the emotional state is what is the recharge, right? What are you doing to renew your body, your emotions, your mental state, right? Because we all get pressure tested. We all get pushed to the limit, but what are you doing to recover and renew? So the renewal for the physical is working out, like not going for a run, but lifting some heavy stuff.
Yep.
And then the renewal for our mental state is going to be the silence, is going to be the mindfulness practice, meditation, whatever that is that works for you. And then self-regulation on the emotions, guys, is it's cardio. It's getting out, going for a walk. It's getting out, going for a run. That's how you regulate these things when they get pressed to the boiling point. And if you don't have some type of practice around or rituals or habits around those activities, you're never going to recover. You're going to be running on an exhausted state Okay. At such a high level. That third pillar is definitely going to be, motivation, and motivation as in what is motivation for you. You cannot motivate somebody else. You can inspire someone else, but motivation comes from, within. It comes in from an internal factor, right? So motivation. Other is going to be our social skills, right? From emotional, how to communicate, how to have bedside manners, how to talk to another human being. And then the last one and the big one that really rounds out emotional intelligence. And if you get this one, then you can get a lot of other things, and that's empathy, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? Because you never know what's going on. And I think this helps too from a listening standpoint, that there's always a story going on in somebody else's head, right? Mm-hmm. It's never what it appears to be. It's always layers deeper. You never really know. So being able to listen and hear little things and ask really good questions to kind of reveal that out, right? And we talk a lot about what we reveal, we can heal. You don't want to live in a state of where you conceal and hide. Mm-hmm. You want to reveal and heal, and that's powerful for anything in any relationship. With your significant other, with your kiddos, with your team members, with your whatever situation that you're in. Man, reveal and heal. That's all what we're looking for. Reveal and heal and problem solve. That's really what it is. So I would say those are some key characteristics. Developing the skill set of emotional intelligence, and then having the renewal practices in place. Like, I don't know any like really great leader that is like at an exceptional level that does not have some type of conditioning, working out, training regimen that they're putting their body through, right? They're really focused on their health first. Yeah. Because when it's the whole airplane analogy, right? Why does the oxygen mask go on you first?
Right. You got to take care of you. You can't take care of anybody else until you take care of you.
Right.
And that's self-care, right? That goes in line with just being a good leader, being a good business person, being a good mom, dad, husband. Like, you have to get that self-care. And it's funny, I remember talking to you about this in the casino at the Atlantis in the Bahamas. And I was telling you, hey man, things have been stressful, crazy, whatever. And I'm like, I'm finding myself running a lot and gravitating towards like long, light jogs and walks. And that was restorative to me, but it was because I was going through high amounts of stress. And so the last thing I wanted to do was go put a bunch of weight on the squat rack or put my weight vest on and do a bunch of pull-ups, because that wasn't going to restore me when I was already burned down. I needed to just go a light walk for 3-4 miles, have some silence. And that was the self-care that I needed to be in a good place, to be a good husband, a good leader of my team, a good salesperson. So it's being aware, of like where you at and maybe you don't need to do an hour of CrossFit today. Like, maybe that's not good. Maybe you need to go on a 40-minute light jog or 20 minutes, right? Versus trying to like push through this threshold because I committed. Like, commit, but also be a little bit flexible within that, right? And give yourself that break. And that's where you have to know, like, it's not that you're having a lack of integrity. You're using intelligence, saying, hey, you know what? I only slept 4 hours last night. I got a lot going on. So even though I committed to doing CrossFit tonight, maybe that's not the best way for me to revive myself to show up as a better person. And I remember you teaching me that. You're like, hey man, you're doing that because that's how you're healing and revitalizing yourself right now. You don't want to lift weights. That's how you physically restore, get powerful, but that's not if you're run down. And so I think that's super key. I think some people miss that, because they're going in at 6 a.m. and deadlifting a bunch of weight. And then by 2, they're crashing or they're tired. And it's like, hey, maybe you should have done a yoga session. Maybe you should have did some jogging. So self-care is important, but knowing what kind of self-care you need during that day or that time period, I also say is probably even more key. So love that, man. And then the empathy thing, I want to touch on that because I think the empathy leads to influence, because the people that you're trying to lead, whether it's your buyer, seller, team member, husband, kids, they can feel whether or not you're being empathetic with them, and so they can feel like, does this person care, or are they just trying to get me to do something? If you actually care and they can feel that, that's a whole nother level, and sometimes being vulnerable as a leader, I feel like brings out that empathy. Like you can relate to people, you can even share with them maybe something you're going through, right? Appropriately, right? Use your social skills to make sure that's appropriate. But a lot of times when you're vulnerable about stuff you're going through, you can kind of watch as a lot of those walls come down. And then you can really have empathy for this person. They can feel you care. That feels good. And then whatever that leads to, whether it's more revenue, more money, less money, now you're running your business the right way and it feels good because you're doing right by people. So I love the empathy thing. That's something that I've been working on a lot as a leader, is empathy and listening and vulnerability, because I'm aware, self-awareness, number one, of my superpowers. My superpowers are powerful, charismatic, hard charger, right? But a lot of that can crush your leadership because you lack sometimes empathy, vulnerability, listening, right? So you got to know where you're strong and where you're weak. So love that.
No, when to interject it as well. You know, you said something there about vulnerability, and I was thinking, this is not an easy process. This goes through and it takes time. And one of the best definitions of trust that I've ever seen is vulnerability times time equals trust. So being vulnerable, being open, being real, being transparent, being, just being you over a period of time, being genuine with people, man, that builds trust. And I think that's really what we're trying to get to, influencing others, getting them to trust you, but it's being genuine, it's being yourself over an extended period of time, knowing that it doesn't happen overnight. It takes the effort, it takes the energy, it takes developing the relationship, building that relationship capital. But on that empathy front, man, the best video that I've ever seen, the Cleveland Clinic nailed it. It's the best 4 minutes on empathy. If you watch it, I have a hard time watching it. It rips you. And it's if you just jump on YouTube, put in Cleveland Clinic empathy. And sit back. You might want to grab you some tissue.
Okay, we'll post that in the comments. So what do you feel like they nailed so well there that made you, like, what was your biggest takeaway?
You get it when you watch it. It just you never know we have no reason or ability. As human beings, we instantly judge, right? We judge, first 3 seconds. I promise you, anybody listening to this Facebook Live, they judged us soon as it came on. But what it teaches you is that you never know what's going on in somebody else's head. You don't know what situation that they're dealing with. And so from a leadership standpoint, being able to listen, like you were talking about, being the best listener that you can. And this really helps with sales, is that you've got to ask questions and listen to find out where people are at in their lives. And from when you know where they're at, then that's how you can help. Right. So many of us, we want to push our agenda on people and wonder why they don't respond. It's because we're trying to push an agenda and give them solutions and outcomes to a problem that's not even going on in their head. And so from a leadership standpoint, being able to sit back and, really, really ask great questions, find out where your people are at, find out what's going on in their head. And then you can give the right prescription. You can talk them through, you can share similar situations. You can, hook them up with somebody that can help them solve that problem. And that's where you continue to build, and strengthen that trust in that relationship.
Right. And the side benefit too, probably, is that they feel heard. People want to feel heard. If you're coaching someone, if they're going through something, if you're like, a lot of times they just want to be heard, and so, you can't help them unless you know exactly what's going on. That's probably the biggest part of it. Listen well, and offer a solution that is actually right for that person. Right. But also, man, you got to hear people, so many people, people don't quit companies, right? People quit people. And so many people leave companies because they just don't feel heard. My manager's not listening to me. My team lead's not listening. Like, they just don't feel like they're being heard. And so, and that's the same for a spouse, kid, everything, right? Like, just don't interject. Man, I work on that with my wife. Don't interject. I'm a fix it guy, right? So it's like, just be there and just listen and just hear it out, right? And maybe don't even offer a solution. Maybe you just sit with that, even in business or personal. Maybe you just, hey, I got it. I want to digest this and let's chat again. I wanted to hear you out first versus just cool. Now I got the answer. Here it is.
You know what also is powerful with that too? When you said there, just sit with it with them and let them know that you've dealt with it. You know what? It's, man, it's okay. I get scared sometimes, right? I don't know how to answer that sometimes. Right. That's that whole vulnerability with them. You don't have to provide a solution. It's okay to align with them and just let them know that it's okay to not know.
Yeah.
We can work together and figure that out. I think is really really powerful.
And that's that vulnerability piece. I think acknowledging fear is the biggest part because 100% of people are afraid, even the bravest people, right? And so when you can acknowledge that, like I was helping my brother and my best friend, I've been doing some real estate investing, bought some commercial property in the Midwest. The biggest thing I've been talking to them about was I'm like, hey, I know this is scary. I was scared too, pulling the trigger 8 weeks ago on 29 units, whatever. I'm like, hey, I know how scary it is. So I want to acknowledge that. And the best way to starve fear is through action. You're going to be afraid. You're going to be afraid until it happens. And you're still going to be afraid even right after it happens. But if you don't acknowledge that with people, they sometimes think that you're superhuman. This is John Kitchens, 10,000 coaching sessions, always suave, always prepared, man. You are like the guy. Like when I'm at the mastermind, I'm like, this is the guy, dude. This is like, for guys like Jay and Mike, this is the guy that makes everything smooth and perfect and seem like put together, right? And so when you sit down with somebody like you or somebody who's super powerful, that vulnerability piece and acknowledging that fear and maybe trying to find out what that person's afraid of, because they're afraid of something. That fear is stopping their action and their productivity in some way. Figure out what that fear is and tell them that's okay. And I have that same fear, and so does everybody else. Here's how I felt, right? Even sharing that, right? And so that's that vulnerability piece. Sometimes we want to come off so powerful, even to our selling it, even to our customers. You can even tell them, hey, I'm uncertain about that. Yeah, that was weird, that thing in the market. Like just leveling with people and being truthful, and there's a lot of power in that if you want to influence people. So
powerful.
And so I want to kind of, because I know we're getting here to the end, just to kind of wrap it up. And I have 2.5 full pages of notes here. So there's nuggets. We're going to post the Cleveland Clinic video in the comments, guys. Make sure you watch that. If John says to watch something, you want to watch it. Love the 5 pillars. We're going to post those. If you were to give somebody, not to kind of put on the spot, like the one tip, like for you, like what was the one biggest tip when you went from being good at business, being intelligent, like, okay, now you're getting self-aware, you're getting your social skills better, you're leading yourself, but how did you evolve and what was your biggest thing to going to leading yourself, leading others, to now becoming a great leader of great leaders? What is kind of the one thing that you feel is necessary to make that shift?
That's a great question. And, really, I think it really comes down to letting go of the ego, letting go of control. That's one of the key triggers to ego is control, and letting go, and really moving away from that. And you don't have to be right. You don't have to be controlling, and it's hard, right? And anybody that's ever dealt with control issues can relate that. Just building that, finding that trust and letting go. I think learning how to better communicate and set clear agreements with your team, with yourself. We talk about agreements versus expectations all the time. And, anytime that you have an expectation with another human being, you're going to be let down 100% of the time. And so it's so critical to form crystal clear agreements with yourself and with everybody else. And to just simplify that, it's to get real clear on who's doing what by when. And even more importantly, how are we going to let each other know we got that done? Right. So when we talk accountability, there's 3 legs to accountability. And where most people get tripped up is that they only implement 2. Right. So accountability is, what are you going to do? When are you going to get it done by? And then the 3rd leg is, how am I going to know you got that done? then it's on you, right? So, Adam, if you and I were forming an agreement here with something, and we were setting up some accountability, I'd say, okay, cool. So what are you going to do? And then you're going to get that done by, and then even more importantly, how am I going to know you got it done? And you're going to let me know. You're going to be like, well, hey, I'm going to update it into the scoreboard. So the scoreboard will be updated by 5:00 today. So you'll be able to see where we're at and updated numbers, whatever it is. And when you start to form and have those agreements, it removes a lot of pressure. I find myself, and we've all done this. Let me give you a little background to this. And, I talk with Holly about this quite a bit because she gets frustrated with me with things and I'll get frustrated with her with things. And then I'll catch myself and I'll be like, why am I getting upset with her? Like, we have no agreement with that. That's on me. That's 100% on me. Right.
Yeah.
So if I'm getting upset, it's because I didn't take the time to have a conversation with her to get a clear agreement on whatever that was. And when you can really start progressing and moving towards understanding agreements, it allows you to live with integrity, and you can do the same thing with yourself, right? You can create the agreements with yourself, and then are you keeping those agreements, keeping those promises? But that's really, really powerful. And then that way you can start letting go of control, and you can understand that you have these agreements in place. When you're going to get followed back up on, and then that allows people to have real commitments, right? We hear people say, man, I'm committed to that. I'm committed to that. I'm committed to making $1 million this year. Okay. What's it going to take for you to make $1 million this year? Let's reverse engineer that.
Right.
Now, this is what you got to do every day, every week, every month for that to be a reality. Are you willing to do that? No, I'm not. Okay, then you're not committed. But let's see what you're willing to do. What are you willing to commit to? And I think those are some of the key things from a leadership perspective. If you can really work towards those, work towards that. But the biggest thing, Adam, and you know this, I mean, you and Sarah are amazing, is that, how are you showing up each and every day, right? The number one thing that it all boils down to, guys, is that, you're leading by example. I mean, we can, preach a better sermon with our actions than with our lips. So, are we modeling the behavior that we want to instill into our people, into our team? Wow. I say that a lot with our kids, right? So, because the kids and team are the exact same example.
Same thing.
They might not say much, but I guarantee you they're watching. They're paying attention. How's Adam showing up today?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, they're paying attention to what I'm doing way more than what I'm saying. And so are your team members too, right?
100%.
And you will never feel good about yourself holding your team members to a higher level of accountability and agreements than you hold yourself to. You will feel incongruent, like a hypocrite. Because I've been there. If I'm not holding myself to a high accountability level, I've noticed that my ability to hold my team to a high accountability level goes down as well.
100%.
And we've all been there. It's like, okay, forgive yourself.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, you set the standard. You
just do. But I like what you're saying, guys. I mean, what, when, and how am I going to know, right? Inspect what you expect, trust and verify. But that also gets rid of any, like you said, hidden expectations. Oh, my team, my office leads let me down. My listing agent, my buyer's agents let me down. This person I listed their house is let me. Well, it's like, did you make a clear agreement? Do they know what's going on? Do they know when? And then how do they know? Right. And so if all that is ironed out and it's done well, you're going to cut down on a lot of disagreements because everything is clear, right? 100%. You'll still have some, but man, you don't have to control and micromanage as much when you do that, right? And that's a beautiful thing because ultimately that control comes off. It's kind of control comes from fear. It's kind of a nasty, like anger, fear, like love or fear, right? And if I were to choose, control comes from a place of fear, but when you have an agreement, you don't have to come from a place of fear anymore.
Right. Scarcity, survival usually triggers that as well. So being able to live there. And two, another thing, to look at, if we start to see that the agreements are off a little bit, maybe the goal's changed, right? Maybe our goal has changed a little bit. And so we haven't recalibrated our agreements because we changed the goal. working with a few individuals to where, you know, they've made some adjustments coming out, going into, you know, the halftime of the year, going into the second half. They kind of recalibrated their goals based upon kind of where things were at and new opportunities. And so they, you know, they did a really good job at recalibrating the goals, but they didn't align their team to hit the goal and recalibrate what their actions and their tasks and their jobs, their functions were going to be. And so things get off, right? And what happens from a leadership perspective is that, you know, your team, I honestly believe if they're a core value fit, they're going to show up every day. They're not going to wake up and they're going to say, man, how can I destroy Adam and Sarah's business today? They're just not going to. This doesn't happen that way. They're going to get up and they're going to be like, man, I'm going to do the best that I can, that I know of in my mind, what is best to help the organization succeed. And you're going to say, well, I need you doing this because that's what is going to help the organization succeed. And that's where the friction bumps in, is because we don't have a clear definition of what is success for each individual for what we're trying to accomplish. That is an alignment to the goal, to the outcome that we're trying to get after. And so a lot of those frustrations, and, you know, you said, I mean, there are no business problems. There's leadership problems every time.
Yeah. So, I mean, amazing. Yeah. My big takeaway from that is that you can't just wing leadership. You got to be organized. It's a skill. There's a format, there's systems. Like leadership, people think charisma, they think power, they think charm. They don't think organization and systems and clarity. Like, you cannot wing leadership. You can be a great speaker and your organization can fall apart because you don't have all these things we're talking about that actually makes for a great leader. Great leaders aren't born. It's not about, again, your ability to sell or charm. It's about everything we just talked about, which takes preparation and organization and can be a little bit monotonous. You know, you got to set systems up. It's not always sexy. No. That's kind of my big takeaway. I know you do that. And if you don't do that, guys, have somebody like John that you coach with or that you work with that's on your team that does that. I would imagine, knowing Jay and Mike super well, they don't do all of that probably as good as you. Maybe they do. I'm not really sure. But you need somebody that actually has that if you don't, right? Coach with somebody that does it, partner with somebody that doesn't, hire somebody that has that. But, you know, and that's where the self-awareness thing comes in. So love it, John. Well, hey, unless you have anything else you wanted to add, we got some nuggets, guys. We're going to put this in the comments. You know, if you guys are going to be at the mastermind, for those of you tuning in here, we're going to be there in Key West. So looking forward to that. And John, thanks for your time. Always a pleasure, my brother.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Bye.
See you.